going to try to cover these topics this morning, so I'll try to be reasonably fast. I'll talk about fast CGI, what directives you can use to configure Lasso 9, how to run Lasso 8.5 and Lasso 9 in the same machine, how to run multiple Lasso 9 sites, and then the web request, web response objects, and then we'll look at Lasso 9 administration briefly. Yeah, so fast CGI, most of you are probably passingly familiar with it. It's a, I mean, it's hardly a new API, but it's been around at least a decade and is a replacement for CGI, which addresses a lot of the problems with CGI. So the great thing about fast CGI is that it is implemented in a lot of different web servers. Most web servers, even going back quite a few years, have an installation, have a way to use it, either a module or it's just built in. So even like we were going to drop support for WebStar, but that wouldn't even be necessary in Lasso 9. So if you have WebStar, you can rest easy. So yeah, so the big deal for us with fast CGI is that we can support more variety of different web servers without additional engineering on our part. Once we support the API, we only have to address if there are minor problems with the fast CGI implementations on different web servers. So that eliminates the need. It seems like a trivial component, but the Apache component that we ship for Lasso 8.5 is currently like a quad build component. It's a fairly complex piece of software, and supporting all the different Apache versions, even on macOS 10, requires some work. So it'll be nice to be able to kind of move some of that manpower time into Lasso. It also should make it easier for us to integrate with some of the more automated ISP tools, because configuring Lasso on the server side, on the web server side, will be amount to changes to the configuration files rather than the installation of software on the web server. So the benefits to Lasso 9, one of the big benefits is that we're going to be able to push the kind of the site abstraction back into the web server, which is really where it belongs, because for the most part, people who are serving multiple websites they've configured those websites as virtual hosts in their web server, and then they've configured them again as sites in Lasso. And so by pushing things back into the web server, you're just going to configure virtual hosts with kind of different configurations for the different Lasso instances that you need to launch. It makes it easier to run Lasso on a different machine from the web server, and also allows Lasso to be launched on demand if necessary. So I'm going to go over the Apache directives that we use to configure Lasso. When you install Lasso, I believe this is actually an optional install, so you may want to keep an eye out for this. But when you run, I should also mention I did all my testing on macOS 10, and so on Linux, everything I talk about should be relevant to Linux, but in particular, like the file paths and things can be different. So yeah,
this is users on macOS.
Yeah. So yeah, it's USR.
No.
Or
APH2 /
users. Yeah. So anyway, just watch out for the file paths, and of course on macOS 10, if you're using other than the default install of Apache, so when you run the Lasso 9 installer, though, on macOS 10, if you choose to customize the install, there's an option to install this Apache configuration file. If you don't do that, you can find it in the Lasso install. There's a directory and this file is there, so you can move it manually after the install. So yeah, so the Lasso 9 Apache 2 configuration file though contains a set of directives that launch one instance of Lasso server on demand. And I'll show the different directives. And Lasso server, the way it's loading with this configuration file, it actually launch. If you stop Apache, the Lasso server actually is shut down by Apache. So it's basically for the duration of the web server running. And it also, if Lasso server should crash, then Apache should bring it back up on the next request. So there's kind of a, I don't know, I mean, there's some trade-offs there. Because if you stop the web server, like Lasso's email serving would stop as well. Okay? So there are some trade-offs that we may need to think about. We may need to think about as we work on this. So if we go through that configuration file, the first thing is loading the fast CGI module. This is installed to run Lasso 9. One of the most important requirements is to have a fast CGI module. I mentioned at the bottom that CentOS seems to have the module by default. Apache in macOS 10 Leopard and Snow Leopard has the module by default. On earlier versions of macOS 10, you can certainly install mod fast CGI, but it was not installed by default, so it needs to be compiled and installed. And we may be able to provide a little more assistance to that later on. At the top of the file, there's a location directive, which allows the Lasso files to be loaded. And then we get to the fast CGI configuration. This line launches Lasso automatically. Apache, this is what tells Apache to handle launching Lasso server, and we tell it what port we want it to run on. And I'll get into that in a little bit. And then Apache, kind of handles all the rest. Then below that, we have a couple more fast CGI configurations. Here we're defining a server called Lasso 9, and we're telling it what port we're running on. And then the script alias match is going to redirect traffic to this Lasso 9 folder to our fast CGI server. And for the purposes of Lasso 9, we basically reserved the Lasso 9 directory as the place that we serve our administration files. And also, if you create Lasso apps, they can be served out of that directory as well. I just want to mention the pass header option here. It is necessary to do that, otherwise Lasso doesn't get the authorization header. That particular header seems to be handled specially by fast CGI. In general, just about any other header you can think of, I don't know of any other header that isn't passed by default, except for authorization. So that's evidently, they felt for security purposes, I guess they didn't want to just pass the authorization header, but Lasso obviously wants the authorization header. Otherwise you can't log into Lasso security. So we add that option. So then we do we define another fast CGI server. This goes to the same instance of Lasso, but we use the two fast CGI servers that are configured in a slightly different way. And here again, though, we do a script alias match, and we map the .lasso file extension to this fast CGI server. So this makes all .lasso files Lasso. We also map the .lasso9 file extension to Lasso, which is can be handy for testing.